Bust it.
They present the popular radio program Political Platform on the Ray Power FM network. Ray Power FM Political Platform, now on television. Keep track of the country's polity and be part of the process as they discuss and put political developments in the country into perspective. It's Ray Power Political Platform on AIT Abuja.
Hello and thanks for staying with us. It's Political Platform. My name is Amecha Nakwe. The judiciary is throwing up very important issues. A judgment by the Court of Appeal in Lagos saying that the EFCC or indeed any other anti-corruption agency lacks powers to prosecute or even investigate 7 judges. Of course, a case was brought from the High Court in Lagos, an objection raised by the Justice Nganjiwa, who's been prosecuted for allegedly collecting $260,000 and 8.6 million naira to, of course, move judgment towards one direction. He raised an objection that the EFCC does not have the powers to either investigate or prosecute him. The High Court said yes, that the EFCC reserves the power, but he went to a Court of Appeal, and the Court of Appeal says no, it is only the National Judicial Council that can prosecute, of course, that has a responsibility of indeed disciplining, carry out disciplinary measures against judges. This has thrown up a lot of issues. Of course, flowing from that judgment, we can take it to mean that the EFCC and indeed any other agency can prosecute a judge who commits a crime outside the functions of his office. But in as much as it is tied to his office, it must go to the National Judicial Council. If, of course, the council finds the judge guilty and orders his dismissal, it is only then that the anti-corruption agencies can go for his jugular by indeed dragging him to court. We shall be taking a look at this. And of course, the new executive of the PDP has resumed, Uche Secondus, the chairman, reminding APC that their time is up at the Aso Rock Presidential Villa, Abuja. Follows from that convention, some of the aggrieved members, Professor Abubakar Suleiman, who vied for the position of National Publicity Secretary, raised issues against the convention. But yesterday, it was President Goodluck Jonathan who led a delegation of some of his political associates to visit his house to appeal to him to allow sleeping dogs to lie, accept the outcome of that convention, and indeed work for the success of the PDP. And one of the powers of the governors, some people describe them as emperors. They played a great role in the PDP convention and going by the exchanges between Governor Richard Okorocha and Bola Ahmed Tinubu, the leader of the APC. The position of governors in the choice of candidates, in, of course, the flow of events within parties is one that we must take a look at. Okorocha has said almost all the governors are in support of the president coming back in 2019 for a re-election. But Tinubu reminded them that indeed the president must go through the entire process. But you know full well that indeed once the governors have taken a position, rarely do people counter successfully. Boduri Debayo is with me in the studio as usual.
Yes, Amishi, I think the power of the governors, if you take a look at, they started getting more powerful, if I will use that word, towards the 2003 general election. Even though in the previous republics, particularly the aborted republic, you know how powerful the governors were also. And one will recall vividly that it was the governors led by Olusegun Oshoba, the governor of Ogun State then, that on the platform of SDP, that insisted that Babagana Kikiwe should become the running mate to Abiola. They put their feet down.
And not Atiku Abubakar.
Not Atiku Abubakar, and not the late NSC president, Pascal Bafeau, because those are the two people that have been considered from Adamawa State. Because Abiola then was conscious of the fact of of running away from a Muslim ticket. He was considering Pascal Bafiao Muslim Christian ticket, but the governor put their feet down. So if you look at from that period to this Fourth Republic, the governors have become exceedingly very, very powerful in the scheming, in the intrigue, in the horse trading for top positions within the political parties, particularly that of picking the tickets of the party. I think there are other issues that I think are very weighty yesterday that we also need to talk about, and that one is the protest for and against
pro and anti-SARS.
Continued existence of the special anti-robbery squad, the anti-robbery arm of the Nigerian police. There is what is called believability in public relations. I think the police need to go a step further to prove to Nigeria that there is a need for the existence of this arm. If there are wrongs that have been identified, the best they can do is perhaps to right those wrongs, and so that they can perform their job. Because those who are protesting against us they have become an arm of the police that is now used to terrorize people, human rights abuse. And the governor of Rivers State went a step further that SARS is now being set up, strengthened specifically to rig the election for APC in 2019. That is an allegation.
And
anyway.
That has thrown up partisanship into this protest. APC members in Rivers being part of the pro-SARS protest, while the PDP members are part of the anti-SARS protest.
So something needs to be done. The police need to prove to us that there is the need for SARS. And if there are wrongs, the agency itself, that arm of the police, need to be reformed so that people can believe it. The second aspect is the issue of this judiciary, that the judgment in Lagos yesterday by the Court of Appeal. I think what my reading of it is that judicial pronouncements will help us to strengthen rules, regulation, and even the constitution in the country in such a way that, and that is what happened elsewhere, be it in US, be it in particularly Britain, that doesn't have a written constitution. Is judicial pronouncement that helps them to strengthen their system. And I think if this judgment is pushed further to the level of Supreme Court, then it becomes an acceptable thing. But I don't think. I think judicial pronouncement must be encouraged, particularly those that will help us to strengthen our system.
We will spend time on this issue. Thibault Morel, our judiciary correspondent, is also with us.
Thank you very much, Amechi. I think the new chairman of the PDP, you mentioned it, he made his first speech before other executives and members of the press as well. I want to see him. He has a lot of energy anytime he talks. He seems to inspire a lot when he talks. But I think perhaps what he needs to do more is be a lot more conciliatory and bring a whole lot of people together. The PDP has a lot of rebuilding to do. So many people are grieved, so many negative comments made before and after the convention. A lot of rebuilding needs to be done. I would love to see a situation where the executive, the new national executive of the party, move from one state to the other, especially in the southwest, to reassure. Because when you hear some of the things that, for instance, the ones credited to the governor of Rivers State, that southwest has not really contributed anything to the PDP, and at the end of the day, his candidate was the one who emerged as the national chairman of the party. It more or less pushes people from that region very far away. And going into 2019 election, a very, very critical zone. Very critical
What's
zone.
The difference between that statement and the president 97 and 5%?
Well, that's a president talking generally. But in this case, you're talking about members of your own party. You directing it to members of your own party that have not really contributed much to your own party. So it's quite key. It's different from a president who is in power and his party who is in power than a party that is not in power, that needs to build as much consensus as you need if you want to take power at the center in 2019.
You got it right. There's need for conciliation. No winner takes it all attitude. We must always be accommodative. Inclusiveness is one thing every person in government or in any important position must think of in actions, in utterances, and in deeds. Let's welcome some mails. I think we have a break, no break for today. We'll now take your mails, some of the mails you sent to our email platform, political platform at yahoo.com. Then we come back to analysis.
Thanks, Amici. Welcome to the mail segment. I'm Amaka Okoro.
I'm Saitin Yari.
We begin with a reaction on the lingering fuel scarcity in the country, and it's coming from Dixon Eka in Abuja. The mail reads, with President Muhammadu Buhari sitting as the Minister of Petroleum, the lingering fuel scarcity resulting in long queues in the filling stations still can't be addressed after over 2 weeks of persistent scarcity nationwide. Why can't we have a government of change that is truly change-oriented? Why is it always difficult for the NNPC to supply fuel during the Yuletide? Why can't we have an NNPC managing director that can forecast the possible scarcity during the Yuletide and increase supply before the period? Why do we always have new heads of government and agencies but continue to do things the usual way or even doing worse? I urge the President and the Minister of Petroleum Resources to find a lasting solution to the December fuel scarcity that has become an annual occurrence, with dealers taking advantage of the government's inactivity to enrich themselves.
Writing on yesterday's analysis on the program, Shedrack Dasuki in Abuja says, I enjoyed the interview you had with Mr. Kola Ologbonde of the PDP and Mr. Bolaji Abdullahi of the APC. I must say that Mr. Kola Ologbonde made my day in the clash of two journalists, former colleagues and friends. It is laughable that APC, who claim that PDP is dead, is not only an interloper in PDP affairs, but drinking Panadol for PDP's headache. If there's anyone that has the morality to talk about PDP convention or affairs, it is not Bolaji Abdullahi, who was not only a member of PDP for 16 years, but was given an opportunity to serve as minister by Dr. Goodluck Jonathan. My advice to Bolaji Abdullahi and APC is that they should first put their house in order, conduct their own national convention, and fulfill all their wishful promises to Nigerians before commenting on PDP's matter. We are tired of APC's blame game on PDP after 3 years of being in power. God help Nigeria.
Shago Bansho in Kuje Abuja says, undoubtedly, the condemnation by the People's Democratic Party's National Convention by the All Progressive Congress can be likened to a busybody trying to get rid of a mild fire in his neighbor's boss quarters when an inferno is consuming his house with ruthless ferocity. The monetization of the APC primaries in Edo and Ondo states, the fight of supremacy by political gladiators in many APC-controlled states, and its inability to conduct a convention is an indication that the APC as a party is more divided and is morally deficient like the opposition party. Therefore, I urge the new leadership of the People's Democratic Party to immediately start a process of reconciling members so that they can provide an alternative to Nigerians. And this is how far we can go on today's mail segment. Keep sending your contributions to us. Send them to us through politicalplatform@yahoo.com.
Thank you so much for the mails. Let's start with the Court of Appeal judgment in Lagos. The implication and interpretation is that even if the EFCC has evidence that some judges are corrupt, they must not investigate and they are not empowered by our laws to prosecute. What they need to do is to take the evidence in form of a petition to the National Judicial Council. It is only after the National Judicial Council has exhausted the processes, find the judges guilty, dismiss them or retire them, that a criminal case can now be instituted. What it means is that it is the National Judicial Council that can discipline judges. They put some aspects of the Constitution, also talking about principles of the Federation of Power, which says that, of course, it is the National Judicial Council that can discipline and regulate the activities of judges. The FCC immediately rejected that judgment, saying, from what the Court of Appeal has said, criminal trial should not take precedence over administrative procedure. And they believe that based on their own understanding of our laws, whenever a criminal issue is involved, it must rise and above any administrative procedure. Of course, the NJC's action here being interpreted to mean administrative procedure. So it throws up a lot of issues in the anti-corruption campaign. it says that the NJC must play a very vital role.
It's a very interesting one, Amechi, and what makes it a lot more delicately poised is the fact that it is the judiciary that interprets our laws. So, for instance, if you want to describe it as a disagreement or a debate between the EFCC or the executive and the judiciary on matters of law, at the end of it is the judiciary that tells you this is the position of the law. I don't know what the position would be when it climbs to the highest court, it's the Supreme Court, on this matter. But as we speak, as pronounced by the Court of Appeal in Lagos, it essentially means that the EFCC cannot proceed. They have a right to go ahead and I think this is all a fallout of what happened on the 8th of October 2016 when the residence of judges were invaded here in Abuja, in Port Harcourt, and some were arrested and detained for a while in the DSS and were eventually charged to court. Out of all those judges, only one of those cases has reached a logical conclusion at the trial court. That's Justice Adeni Ademola, who was recently also sacked by the NJC, compulsory retired by the NJC. A number of them too still have their cases yet to be completely determined. The EFCC seems to be finding it difficult to conclude the trial. A lot was said about the investigation being shoddy and prosecution also following up in not very, very competent manner, making it difficult for it to be decided. At this point, those judges are hanging. Take, for instance, Justice Iyan Okoro of the Supreme Court and Justice Nguta of the Supreme Court. Iyan Okoro, for instance, has yet to be charged to court. But you had arrested him, his homes were raided, he was detained with the EFCC. With the DSS. With the DSS, beg your pardon. Right now, he's just hanging in state of suspended animation. But he's still drawing salaries from the system. That tells you the process which I think the Court of Appeal is trying to emphasize. You have evidence against these judges based on your intelligence, based on your ability as a investigation agency to investigate crimes, because the NJC cannot investigate crimes. They don't have the capacity to investigate crimes.
It's administrative.
It's administrative. The EFCC has those capacities to investigate crimes. Gather all the information, give it to the NJC. At that point, the NJC even is on its toes because the facts are before you to act. And at the end of the day, when those judges are sacked, the EFCC can then pick them up, arraign them.
I think that's what the judgment here is saying, that whatever evidence you have must be passed through the NJC. That the EFCC or ICPC or police can only prosecute after the NJC has dismissed the officer and not before. That's the key point here. But the judgment also says that if it is a crime committed allegedly outside the performance of the official functions, DFCC's, police, ICPCs can investigate. But once it is perceived to have been committed in the course of the discharge of their functions as judicial officers, then the NJC must be the first port of call.
I want to believe that the point of the judgment is to create more synergy between the EFCC, the DSS, the police, and the NJC, instead of creating a kind of discord and disagreement between them. Because if it's about help us gather information about corrupt judges, which not only the police or the EFCC or the ICPC can do, even Nigerians can do that, because the NJC relies on petitions sent in by Nigerians. We've had cases in the past where the DSS have gathered information about a judge who had acted unbecoming of his office as a judge. Those informations were presented to Mr. President. The Mr. President called the Chief Justice of Nigeria at the time, presented the facts to him, and those facts were presented before that judge. Nobody asked him to step down. He had to step down. And the NJC took his decision, giving it a leeway for the anti-corruption agencies, the prosecuting agencies, to take the necessary action.
Adebayo, you have something to drop in here?
Yeah, I think I hope that this matter will reach the Supreme Court.
The AFCC says they're heading towards the
Supreme Court. Let us hear our pronouncement on it. I think, like I said earlier on, is judicial pronouncements are necessary, particularly forthright pronouncement that can help us strengthen the system. I think my take on this issue is that the judiciary is trying to assert itself, that there is
independence.
Yes, independence. There is separation of power, and they should be allowed to do that. They should be allowed to handle matters that affect the judiciary, and after they have taken decisions on it, then it is now the duty of the executive to probably use its necessary agencies to probably handle the aftermath of that decision that will have been taken. If the Supreme Court sustains this judgment, I think our laws has also been enriched. Not only enriched, the system will also be the beneficiary at the end of the day.
Well, if you take it further down, the issue of petitions before the NJC, there have been allegations that they don't act, they are not decisive, they are not as fast as they should, that sometimes they appear to treat petitions against the 7 judges with kid gloves. If you also look at the issue of principles of separation of power, some persons have argued that if you allow the executive to investigate, arrest, bust judges, it may be a tool they can use to intimidate judges, knowing full well that once they are not happy with what you're doing, they can raid your homes, you'll be suspended, and it will be a form of intimidation. But of course, it's left for the other structures and institutions of the society to put pressures on the NJC. And I always repeat, the NJC, despite their shortcomings, is the only body, the judiciary is the only body that corrects and disciplines members.
An internal cleansing mechanism.
Process. It could be slow, but it's the only one that is functional. Go to the National Assembly. Once any member of the National Assembly raises any allegation of corruption, you're suspended. Go to the executive. Once, even when there are established cases against you, Babachi Elawa, cases established against him, the executive refuses to take action.
Or covers
it up. So, despite the fact that, yes, the processes adopted by the NJC, the judiciary may be slow, but some things are being done. And if we believe they are not doing it well, we put pressure on the NJC to do it. So, same way we also have to put pressure on the executive to ensure the prosecution of Babachi Elawa is not different from what the other crimes that are people committed are being prosecuted for. It's not just different, they are the same. So we need to also rise up to our billings as citizens who have a stake in the Nigerian
I think at this point we also want to commend the Chief Justice of Nigeria, Justice Walter Enogen, who seems to be taking these issues head on. He identified the issues and the challenges affecting the judiciary, and he has initiated some very key, worthwhile reforms, which, if followed through at the end of the day, would yield positive fruits for the judiciary. The Anti-Corruption and Financial Crimes Monitoring Committee set up by him to ensure that all the activities of all the parties, the judges, the prosecuting counsel, the defense counsel are monitored and reported, so that at the end of the day, if a case that so much noise had been raised about is thrown out, then a report is hereby presented where there were people, and incidentally, members of this committee are drawn from the Ministry of Justice, which is a supervisory ministry for all the prosecutions we have in Nigeria, and the private legal practitioners as well. But he also highlighted, remember what he highlighted when the Old Nigeria Judges Conference held, I think 2 weeks ago, when he talked about the executive itself acting a lot more responsibly. Decisions of court handed down by court, the executive has always, and I think it's gotten worse in this administration, picked and choose which one it wants to comply with.
If you take a look
that undermines the powers of the judiciary.
Of the Court of Appeal reminds me of the face-off between the EFCC and the DSS. The DSS saying, based on the act setting up the DSS, no anti-corruption agency can prosecute any of his officers. That is not answerable to any of them. That is threat to the president. That's so right. Some form of immunity here being claimed from our laws. Same thing the NJC, the court is saying that it's only the NJC that can
but I don't want to also take it that the Court of Appeal Lagos was saying that judicial officers have immunity because under our constitution,
immunity while performing their function. For instance, if a judge kills somebody,
he can be arrested.
He's easily arrested.
He can be arrested. He can. So we must be clear because a lot of people reading what the papers are reporting, though the details have not been very clear because the judgment was just delivered yesterday. So the process of getting our copies of the judgment might take 1 or 2 days. But from what we are hearing, they are not saying that judges are immune to investigation or prosecution for matters that are outside the realm of the courtroom which they preside over. If they commit any other crime, if a judge commits, kill somebody, of course he can be arrested.
Or steals in the market.
Or slaps somebody or fights in public. He can be arrested because he has acted outside the realms of what that honorable office requires of him.
Okay, let's spend time to talk about the governors. Their overriding influence. They organize elections at the state level. They win 100% perfection. It goes everywhere. They say it's the sole attribute of God, but governors in Nigeria have proved it wrong. Akwa Ibom was the last to conduct local council elections.
320 wards. Council wards were won by the PDP.
Not even one will go to the way of the opposition. It tells you about the powers of
the situation was the same in Enugu some months ago.
Name them. In fact, no exception. There is no state that is an exception in Nigeria.
And in both in APC control states and PDP control states.
Is these powers that the governors bring to the center? Look at what happened at the PDP convention, and look at how governors hijack and control political parties.
Look, Olusegun Obasanjo, no matter which way you look at it, is one of the powerful presidents we've ever had. And if you look at towards his re-election in 2003, when he was seeking once again the ticket of the PDP, he has to go to the governors. And unfortunately, the same Obasanjo made the governors powerful. He said it was through his pronouncement that the PDP Governors Forum came into being. And when it was time for him to leave office in 2007, he said, the governors will choose my successor. At the end of the day, his successor was one of the governors. So you can see that along the line, like I've said earlier on, during the aborted republic, how powerful the governors. They were acquiring power then. They have now become very, very dominant power block in the political system. They
pick party executives. They pick candidates. The Okoroche have said all the governors are rooting for Muhammad Buhari, and it is unlikely, very unlikely, that anybody will change that position.
Should we also be surprised that when these governors accuse the president of being too powerful? Because they themselves are emperors in their own domains, and yet they will be the ones who accuse the Nigerian president, whoever occupies that office, of being too powerful, of exercising his power, muscling people here and there. I think to some extent, I know it's about politics, and there is no morality in politics. It's about control, expanding your control and consolidating it. But to some extent, some decency should be brought into things. It's a difficult call because it's a game of power.
This conversation will continue tomorrow, Wednesday, when we come your way. On behalf of my colleagues, my name is Amechi, and we have a good day.
Bust it.